She was one victory from ending the Wars of the Roses. Then a single chain of decisions, bad roads, worse allies, and one march too far shattered everything. Hey guys, tonight we begin with something darker. A 15-year-old French girl who married a king that couldn't speak to her without blushing. Who watched him lose his mind, literally, staring at walls for over a year, while drool collected at the corners of his mouth. Who fought for 18 years to save her son's inheritance, and lost him anyway. Before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Her name was Margaret of Anjou, and by the time she died, alone, penniless, in a cold French chateau, England had spent decades calling her the she-wolf of France, a demon in a dress, the foreign witch who destroyed their kingdom. But here's what they don't tell you. She didn't destroy England, she tried to save it. From a king who couldn't rule, from nobles who'd rather burn the country down than let a woman lead. From a civil war that nobody could stop because medieval England would rather lose everything than admit a queen was right. They hated her for fighting, hated her for winning battles when her husband couldn't even recognize his own son, hated her for refusing to surrender when every man around her had already given up. And when she finally lost, when her son was cut down at 17 and her husband was murdered in a tower, they blamed her for all of it. Tonight, we're pulling apart what really happened. The teenage bride who became a general. The mother who led armies to protect a son she'd lose anyway. The queen who fought harder than any king and was punished for it. The woman who spent her final years in poverty, forgotten by the country she'd bled for. This isn't a story about winning. It's about fighting when you know you'll probably lose, and being called a monster for trying anyway. So settle in, this is going to take a while. April 1445. Margaret of Anjou is 15 years old when she arrives in England to marry a king she's never met. 15. That's important. Remember that number. She's been travelling for weeks, boats across the channel, cold spray, seasickness, the constant smell of salt and vomit, then days on horseback through muddy English roads. Her thighs ache. Her dress is stiff with dried sweat and road dust. There's a blister on her heel that started bleeding into her shoe. Nobody mentions this in the chronicles, but she's 15 and travelling in April in medieval England. She's cold, tired, and probably terrified, but she smiles, because that's what princesses do. She's been trained for this since she could walk. How to sit without slouching, even when your spine is screaming. How to eat without showing hunger, even when you haven't had a real meal in days. How to smile at strangers who are evaluating you like livestock. Her father is René of Anjou, King of Naples, Sicily, Jerusalem, and about 6 other places he doesn't actually control. He collects titles like other men collect debts, lots of impressive words, empty treasury. He can't afford a dowry, can't give England money or land or anything useful. So instead, England is giving up territory in France as part of the marriage deal, handing over Maine and Anjou, regions they'd fought decades to win, just to marry their king to a penniless French princess. The English nobles are furious. This isn't how royal marriages work. The bride is supposed to bring wealth, land, political alliances. This bride costs them territory. They're paying for the privilege of taking a French teenager off her father's hands. Margaret can feel their resentment the moment she arrives. It's in how they bow, technically correct but somehow insulting. How they smile without warmth. How they whisper in English when they think she can't understand. Except she can. She speaks 4 languages, has been educated by tutors her father couldn't really afford, but hired anyway because appearances matter when you're a king of nowhere. She meets Henry VI at Windsor. He's 23, 8 years older, her husband, her king, the man who's supposed to protect her, provide for her, rule England with strength and wisdom. He can barely look at her, blushes when she speaks, stammers through formal greetings. His hands shake slightly as he takes hers for the ceremonial kiss. He smells like incense and old books. Not sweat or horses or leather like other men. Like he's spent more time in chapels than anywhere else, because he has. Henry VI isn't a warrior king, isn't a politician. He's a monk who accidentally inherited a crown. He'd rather pray than govern, rather forgive than punish, rather hide in his chambers, reading theology, than deal with the nobles currently tearing his kingdom apart. Margaret is 15, in a foreign country, married to a man who flinches when she touches him, surrounded by English nobles who hate her for being French, for being expensive, for existing, and she has no idea that within 8 years she'll be the only thing holding this kingdom together. Because Henry VI is going to lose his mind. Completely. And when he does, Margaret will have to become something medieval queens were never supposed to be. A leader, a general, a woman who makes men kneel or die trying. But right now, she's just 15, tired, bleeding into her shoe, smiling at strangers who despise her, married to a king who can't meet her eyes. Welcome to England, Margaret. Hope you survive. The wedding night is awkward. Medieval weddings came with witnesses. Nobles would wait outside the bridal chamber to confirm consummation. Proof the marriage was legitimate, but Henry sends them away, says it's not necessary, says they'll have privacy, which sounds romantic until you realise it means he's too embarrassed to perform with an audience, too anxious to even try. Margaret lies in the marriage bed, rough linen sheets that smell like lavender and old sweat, and waits. Henry prays, kneels beside the bed for what feels like hours, murmuring Latin, crossing himself repeatedly. She's 15, knows the mechanics of sex in theory, has been told it's her duty to produce heirs, but nobody explained what to do when your husband would rather talk to God than touch you. She waits, falls asleep eventually, still waiting. This becomes the pattern. Henry visits her chambers occasionally, does his duty, but there's no passion, no intimacy. He treats sex like penance, something to endure for the sake of the dynasty. Get it over with, quickly, and return to prayer. Margaret learns to lie still, stare at the bed canopy, count the stitches in the embroidery, think about anything except the man fumbling at her in the dark. It's not painful exactly, just awkward, mechanical, the kind of experience that makes you understand why medieval women weren't expected to enjoy their husbands. The first year passes, then the second. Margaret is 16, then 17, still no pregnancy. The whispers start. Quiet at first. Maybe she's barren. Maybe he's impotent. Maybe the marriage isn't being consummated properly. The pressure builds with every passing month. She starts learning English court politics because she has to understand the factions, the rivalries, who hates whom and why. It's complicated. Generations of grudges layered with fresh insults, layered with political ambitions. The Duke of Suffolk, William de la Pole, becomes her patron, protects her, guides her through the minefield of court life. He'd been instrumental in arranging her marriage, and now he's trying to make sure it wasn't a complete disaster. But Suffolk has enemies, lots of them. Richard, Duke of York, hates him, blames him for England's failures in France, blames him for the marriage treaty that gave up English territory. And there are others, nobles who see Suffolk as too powerful, too close to the king, too influential over the weak-willed Henry. Margaret watches and learns. She's 17, 18 years old, still no pregnancy, still trying to figure out how to survive in this foreign court that resents her existence. She attends councils when allowed, listens, takes notes, starts understanding that her husband is dangerously naive, that he trusts people he shouldn't, that he's being manipulated by stronger personalities. Suffolk is impeached in 1450, charged with treason, with losing France, with being a traitor to England. It's all political theatre. They can't attack Henry directly. He's the anointed king, So they attack his closest advisor instead. Henry tries to protect him, sends Suffolk into exile. Rather than letting Parliament try him, Suffolk never makes it to exile. His ship is intercepted in the Channel. He's dragged onto another vessel, given a mock trial by sailors, condemned, and beheaded with a rusty sword. Takes 6 blows. His body is dumped on the beach at Dover, his head stuck on a pike. Margaret hears about it in Westminster. She's 19. Her protector is dead, murdered, and she understands now. This is how English politics works. You don't retire in disgrace. You don't just lose power. You die, violently, publicly, as a warning to everyone else. She starts building her own network, more carefully this time, more quietly. Edmund Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, becomes her ally. He's Henry's cousin, powerful, competent, one of the few men at court who treats her like a queen instead of an expensive mistake. They work together, planning, strategizing, making the decisions Henry won't make. And of course the rumours start immediately. Margaret and Somerset are having an affair. Obviously. How else would you explain a French queen aligning with an English duke? Must be sleeping with him. Can't possibly be political strategy. Women don't do strategy. Women do sex, no evidence, no witnesses, no love letters or secret meetings. Just the assumption that powerful women must be using their bodies because what else do women have? Margaret ignores it. She has bigger problems. Because Richard, Duke of York, is getting dangerous. He's been serving in Ireland, governing in the king's name, losing slowly because Henry's foreign policy is incoherent. York feels undervalued, unappreciated. He's got royal blood, descended from 2 of King Edward III's sons. His claim to the throne is actually stronger than Henry's in some ways, and he's starting to position himself as the alternative. The man who could restore English glory if only he were in charge. Margaret opposes him. Has to. York is a threat to her husband and to any children she might eventually have. If York gains power, becomes regent or worse, her future children's inheritance is gone before they're even born. So she aligns with Somerset, blocks York's appointments, keeps him in Ireland, keeps him away from real power. The court fractures into factions. York's supporters versus Somerset's supporters. Henry in the middle, trying to make everyone happy, succeeding only in making everyone furious. The kingdom is bleeding money. Losing territory in France. Jack Cade's rebellion in 1450 showed how angry common people were. Thousands of rebels marching on London, demanding reforms, demanding justice. The rebellion was crushed, but the anger remained. And through all of this, still no pregnancy, year after year. Margaret is now 22, 7 years of marriage, 7 years of pressure, 7 years of monthly bleeding, cramping, cloth wadded between her legs, the smell of iron and failure. 7 years of disappointed looks from advisors who won't quite meet her eyes. She prays, makes pilgrimages to holy shrines, consults doctors who suggest remedies, drink this herb, eat more meat, lie with your hips elevated after intercourse. Nothing works. Henry visits her chambers dutifully, but without enthusiasm. The mechanical couplings that leave both of them feeling empty. Margaret starts to wonder if she's cursed, if God is punishing her for something, for being French, for failing to produce an heir, for existing in a country that hates her. The weight of failure sits on her chest every morning when she wakes, every evening when she goes to bed, every moment in between. And then, in 1453, 2 things happen within months of each other. First, miracle of miracles, Margaret gets pregnant, finally. After 8 years of failure and whispers and humiliation, she's carrying an heir, the child that will secure the succession and prove her worth. Prove she's not barren, not useless, not just an expensive French burden. She's 23 years old. She can feel the baby moving inside her. Tiny flutters at first, then stronger kicks, real movement, proof of life. She places her hands on her swelling belly and feels something she hasn't felt in years. Hope. Second, Henry VI has a complete mental breakdown. It happens in August 1453. Henry is holding court at Clarendon. Everything seems normal. He's weak, yes. Indecisive, absolutely. But functioning. And then, mid-conversation, he just stops. Stops talking, stops moving, stops responding. His eyes are open but empty, like someone blew out a candle and left the shell behind. They try to get his attention, call his name, touch his shoulder. Nothing. He sits there, staring, his mouth hanging open slightly, drool starting to collect at the corners and drip onto his chest, his hands loose in his lap. Breathing but not living. At first they think he's having some kind of fit, that he'll snap out of it. They wait. Hours pass. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, doesn't acknowledge anyone's presence. They try everything. Loud noises to shock him back, bringing familiar people to his chambers, showing him holy relics. Nothing works. Days pass, then weeks. Henry VI, King of England, is gone. His body remains, breathing, blinking occasionally, needing to be fed and cleaned like an infant. But the person is absent. He doesn't recognize anyone, doesn't respond to questions, doesn't seem to understand where he is or what's happening. The doctors are baffled. They try bloodletting, open veins in his arms and drain pints of blood into bowls. The medieval cure for everything. It doesn't work. They try purgatives, force-feed him substances that make him crap and vomit, clearing out the bad humours that must be causing this. He defecates on himself, vomits on himself, sits in it until servants clean him. Still doesn't wake up. They try shock treatments, loud bells rung near his head, ice water thrown on his face, sudden movements to startle him back to consciousness. Nothing. He sits there, staring at nothing, while drool collects and servants wipe it away, and his kingdom falls apart around him. Margaret is 6 months pregnant when this happens. Her belly is huge now. The baby kicks constantly. She's uncomfortable all the time. Her back aches, her feet swell. She has to relieve herself every hour. And her husband has lost his mind. She visits him daily, sits beside him, talks to him, tells him about the baby, about court business, about anything, hoping he'll respond, hoping he'll come back. He never does, just sits there. She places his hand on her belly so he can feel the baby kick. Nothing. No reaction, no recognition. His hand is warm but limp, like touching a corpse that's still breathing. The nobles move quickly. This is a crisis. The king is incapacitated. Someone needs to govern. Richard, Duke of York, sees his opportunity, marches to London, claims the regency, says Henry is unfit to rule, says someone needs to govern while the king is lost to madness. And who better than York? Royal blood, military experience, competence, everything Henry lacks. Margaret fights him. She's 7 months pregnant. Her belly is so large she can barely move. Her back is screaming. She's exhausted, but she fights anyway. Demands to be named regent herself. She's the queen. She's carrying the heir. She has the right to govern in her husband's name. The council rejects her. The reasons are polite but clear. She's too young. She's 23. She's too French, can't be trusted to put England's interests first. She's too female. Women can't govern. Unnatural. Against God's order. Against everything proper and right. They give the regency to York. Push Margaret aside. Make it clear she's valuable for her womb, not her mind. Just keep the baby safe and let the men handle politics. Margaret, who's been learning English politics for 8 years, who understands the factions better than most of the men on the council, who's been making strategic decisions for years while her husband prayed. Sidelined because she's a woman, she retreats to Westminster, furious, terrified. Her husband is gone, her enemy is in power, and she's about to give birth with no protection, no guarantees that York won't decide the baby is inconvenient, that the infant might accidentally die. Medieval infant mortality is high. Accidents happen. Who would question it? October 13th, 1453. Margaret goes into labour. Westminster Palace. Cold stone walls, fireplace roaring, but the room is still cold. Medieval heating doesn't reach the corners. She's been in labour for hours. The contractions come in waves. Pain that starts in her back and radiates forward. Tightening, building, peak, release, brief respite, then again. The midwives are here. 3 older women who've done this hundreds of times. They check her dilation with hands covered in birthing blood. Tell her it'll be hours yet. Tell her to walk, to squat, to keep moving, because that helps the baby descend. She walks, her legs shaking, her shift soaked with sweat and fluid. She's 23 years old. Her husband can't help her. Her mother is in France, unreachable. She's alone. The pain gets worse. Contractions coming faster now. Closer together. The midwife checks again. Says it's time. Positions Margaret on the birthing stool, a special chair with a hole cut in the seat. Lets gravity help. Margaret squats, grips the arms of the stool, pushes when they tell her to push. It hurts. More than anything has ever hurt. Your body splitting open, tissue tearing, bone shifting. The certainty that you're dying, that something has gone wrong, that you'll never see your child alive. You scream. Can't help it. High animal screams that don't sound like your voice. The midwives encourage you. Good, my lady. Again, push again. More pushing, more tearing, more certainty of death. And then pressure. Sudden, enormous pressure. Release, something sliding out of you. Wet, warm, gone. Brief moment of absence. Then crying. Not yours, though you've been crying. The baby's high and furious and alive. They clean him quickly. Wipe the blood and vernix off. Cut the cord. Wrap him in linen. Place him on your chest. He's ugly in the way newborns are ugly. Red and squashed and perfect. A son. A healthy, legitimate, screaming son. Edward of Westminster. The heir England demanded. You're bleeding, more than you should be. The afterbirth comes out. This disgusting mass of tissue and blood. The midwives check. Pack herbs between your legs to slow the bleeding. Medieval obstetrics is brutal. You survive childbirth or you don't. There's no middle ground. No emergency interventions. Just hope and prayer and luck. Margaret survives, but she's weak. Lost too much blood. She lies in bed for weeks, too exhausted to move. They bring baby Edward to her for nursing. The pain of your nipples cracking. The exhaustion of feeding every 2 hours. Your body isn't yours anymore. It's leaking, bleeding, producing milk, aching, and you're trying to figure out how to keep this baby alive in a world where his father is mad and his birthright is threatened. Henry VI is still gone, still sitting in his chambers, still staring at nothing. York brings the baby to him after a few weeks, trying to reach him, trying to shock him back to consciousness. Your Majesty, you have a son, an heir, look. Henry stares. The baby cries. Henry doesn't react, doesn't reach for him, doesn't smile, just sits there, dead eyes in a living body. They take the baby away. Henry continues staring. Margaret nurses her son and plans, because York has the regency now, but that can change. Henry might wake up. The political winds might shift, and when they do, Margaret needs to be ready. She's 23 years old, a new mother. Her husband is mad, and her enemy is in power, but she's not giving up, not surrendering, not letting York steal her son's inheritance without a fight. She starts building alliances, quietly, carefully, writing letters, making promises, preparing for the moment when Henry wakes up or dies. Either way, there will be a power vacuum, and Margaret intends to fill it. Christmas 1454. 14 months after Henry's collapse. Margaret is in Westminster with baby Edward, now over a year old. He's crawling, starting to babble. A little person with his father's gentle eyes and Margaret's determined chin. She loves him with a ferocity that frightens her. Would kill for him, would die for him, would do anything to protect his inheritance. And then on Christmas Day, Henry wakes up. Suddenly, mysteriously, like someone flipped a switch. One moment he's gone, the next moment he's looking around, confused. Where am I? What happened? How long have I been? 14 months. He's been gone for 14 months. He doesn't remember any of it. Doesn't remember Margaret's pregnancy. Doesn't remember York claiming the regency. Doesn't remember the council meetings or the decisions made in his name. His last memory is August 1453. Everything since then is blank. They bring baby Edward to him, Margaret holding her son. Your Grace, your son, Edward, your heir. Henry stares at the child, looks at Margaret, looks back at the baby. Whose child is this? Not angry, not suspicious, just genuinely confused. Doesn't understand why there's a baby. Doesn't remember his wife being pregnant. Margaret's heart stops. Because if Henry doesn't remember the pregnancy, people will question whether he's the father. And if Edward's legitimacy is questioned, his claim to the throne is destroyed. Everything she's done, surviving childbirth, protecting her son, fighting York, all meaningless if people think Edward is a bastard. The rumours explode immediately. The king doesn't remember fathering a child. Therefore, it's not his child. Must be Somerset's. Margaret and Somerset have been close, been working together, obviously sleeping together. Obviously, this baby is a bastard. Somerset's son, not the king's. No proof. Never any proof. Just assumptions. Just the conviction that women in power must be using sex to get there. That Margaret couldn't possibly build a political alliance based on strategy and mutual interest. Must be sleeping with him. And if she's sleeping with him, the baby must be his. Margaret ignores the whispers, focuses on Henry, who's back but not fully back. He's confused, forgetful. His memory is spotty. He'll make decisions and then forget them. Agree to something in the morning and deny it by evening. He's unreliable, weak, and the kingdom needs stronger leadership. Margaret starts making decisions in Henry's name. Has to. Someone needs to govern. She restores Somerset to power, dismisses York from the regency, thanks him for his service, polite, gracious, proper, and sends him back to his estates. York, who'd spent 14 months governing England, who'd imposed some order on chaos, is suddenly out, replaced by Somerset, by Margaret's ally, by the man everyone thinks she's having sex with. York is furious. He'd had power, authority, respect, and now he's back to being just another noble, watching from the sidelines while Somerset and Margaret control the weak king. He starts gathering allies, men who feel the same way, men who think Henry is unfit and York should rule, men who resent Margaret's power, who think a French queen making decisions is unnatural, wrong, against God's order. The kingdom is splitting. York's faction versus Somerset's faction. Margaret's supporters versus her enemies. And everyone is armed. Everyone is preparing. Everyone knows war is coming. May 1455, York marches on London with an army. About 7,000 men. Not a small force, not a riot, an army. He's done pretending to be loyal, done accepting secondary status. He's making his move. Claims he's protecting the king from evil counsellors, removing Somerset, saving Henry from bad advice, standard medieval excuse for rebellion. We're not fighting the king, just the people manipulating him. Henry, Margaret, Somerset, and baby Edward, now 18 months old, march out to meet him. They reach St Albans, a small town north of London. Technically, they're going to negotiate. Talk things through, find a peaceful solution. But everyone's armed, everyone's tense, and when negotiations start to break down, York's forces attack. The first Battle of St Albans is short, maybe an hour. Street fighting, Yorkist soldiers breaking down doors, firing arrows down narrow streets, Lancastrian defenders scrambling. It's chaos. Medieval urban combat is brutal. No battle lines, no formations, just men with weapons in tight spaces, hacking, stabbing, dying in alleyways. Somerset is killed, hunted down like an animal. They find him outside the castle inn. Multiple wounds. He tries to fight. Can't. Too many enemies. They cut him down, stab him repeatedly, leave his body in the street. Henry is hit by an arrow. Not seriously. Grazes his neck. But he's bleeding, panicking. He's never been good with violence, never been good with blood. He freezes, just stands there, useless. Margaret grabs Edward and runs. She's 25 years old, carrying a toddler who's screaming, terrified by the noise. Her skirts are soaked with mud and blood. Not hers, splashed from soldiers dying nearby. She's running through streets where men are killing each other, trying to reach safety, trying to protect her son. She doesn't make it far. York's forces capture them. Not roughly. York still needs to maintain the fiction that he's loyal to the king, but captured, controlled. Margaret and Edward are taken. Henry is secured. The battle is over. York has won. He marches them back to London. Henry is restored to the throne, because York doesn't want to be king. Not yet. He just wants to control the king, wants to be the power behind the throne. He takes back the regency, puts his allies in key positions, sidelines Margaret completely. Margaret is trapped. Her ally is dead. Somerset's body is barely cold. Her husband is a prisoner in everything but name. Her son is 18 months old, vulnerable, helpless, and York controls everything. The court, the government, the military, everything. But Margaret doesn't break, doesn't surrender. She starts planning, quietly, carefully, because she understands something York doesn't. Henry is weak, everyone knows it. But Edward, her son, isn't weak yet. Edward is young, healthy, legitimate. If she can protect him, if she can survive this crisis, if she can hold on until Edward comes of age, he'll be king. And Margaret will finally have the power she needs. She just has to survive. Keep Edward alive, keep fighting, no matter how long it takes. For the next few years, England exists in this strange limbo. Henry is king, York is regent or close enough. Margaret is queen but powerless, technically, but beneath the surface both sides are preparing. Building armies, gathering weapons, preparing for the war everyone knows is coming. Margaret moves to the north in 1457, takes Edward, now 4 years old, and goes to Lancaster strongholds, areas where nobles support Henry, hate York, and are willing to fight. She starts acting like a general, meeting with military commanders, planning strategy, gathering funds. This isn't normal queen behaviour. Queens are supposed to be diplomatic, peaceful, mediators, not warriors. But Margaret isn't interested in normal. Her husband can't lead. Her son is too young. If the Lancaster dynasty is going to survive, she has to lead, has to become what medieval queens were never supposed to be, a military commander, a political strategist, a woman who makes men kneel or die. The Yorkists are horrified. A woman commanding armies, making military decisions, leading men into battle, this is unnatural, against God's order. Proof that the Lancaster cause is corrupt, that they've abandoned natural law, that Margaret is a demon in human form. They start calling her the she-wolf of France, an animal, a predator, something less than human, because they can't accept that she's just a woman doing what needs to be done, that she's competent, strategic, brilliant, better than most of the men around her, so they make her a monster instead. Margaret doesn't care what they call her. She's fighting for Edward, for her son's future, for the crown his father can't hold, and he can't yet claim. She's going to win this war, no matter what it costs. 1459, the fighting resumes. Battle of Blore Heath in September. Margaret's forces lose. Richard Neville, Earl of Salisbury, York's ally, defeats a larger Lancastrian army. It's embarrassing, concerning, but not decisive. Battle of Ludford Bridge in October. This time, the Lancastrians win. Sort of. York's army deserts, just walks away when they realise they're facing the king personally. Because medieval soldiers are loyal to the crown, even when the crown is weak. Henry is with the Lancastrian army. His presence, Matters. The Yorkist forces won't fight him directly. York and his allies flee, run to Ireland and Calais, disappear into exile. For a moment, it looks like Margaret has won. York is gone. His supporters are scattered. Henry is restored to full power, meaning Margaret is restored to full power since Henry does whatever she says. She's 30. Edward is 6 years old. The future looks secure, except it's not, because York has allies in exile, and they're planning, building forces, gathering ships, preparing to invade. This war isn't over. Not even close. June 1460. The Yorkists return. Land in Kent, march toward London. The city opens its gates to them, welcomes them as liberators. Margaret is in the north with Edward. She hears the news and her stomach drops. London gone. The south gone. The capital lost. York's forces march north. Meet the Lancastrian army at Northampton in July. It's supposed to be a major battle, decisive. The fight that will end the war, one way or another. Margaret's forces are strong, well positioned, they should win. But one of the Lancastrian commanders, Lord Grey of Ruthin, betrays them. Switches sides mid-battle, opens a section of the defences to let Yorkist soldiers through. It's treachery, medieval warfare's worst nightmare. You can't defend against your own side turning. The Lancastrian army collapses. Henry is captured, again, but more seriously this time. Not just controlled, actually imprisoned, taken to London, held in the Tower briefly before being moved to the Bishop of London's palace. Technically still king, practically a hostage. And York makes his move. October 1460, walks into Parliament, straight up to the throne, puts his hand on it, claims it, says it's his by right, that his descent from Edward III, through 2 lines, not just 1, gives him a better claim than Henry's single line, that he's the rightful king. Has been all along. Parliament is stunned. York has finally stopped pretending. Stopped claiming he just wants to advise the king. He wants to be king, wants to take the crown from Henry, from Margaret, from Edward. They negotiate, try to find a compromise. Nobody wants more war. The kingdom is exhausted, broke, bleeding. So they come up with the Act of Accord. Henry can remain king for his lifetime, but York will be his heir. Edward of Westminster, Margaret's son, the Lancaster heir, will be disinherited. Removed from the succession, his birthright stolen by parliamentary decree. The Act of Accord is signed on October 24th, 1460. It's supposed to end the war. Henry will die eventually. He's 38, not healthy, probably won't live much longer. York can wait a few years. Then he'll be king. Everyone can stop fighting, go home, rebuild. Except nobody told Margaret. She's in Scotland with Edward. They'd fled there when Northampton fell, begging James II of Scotland for help, for troops, for support. James gives them some, not much, but something, enough to keep fighting. Margaret hears about the Act of Accord from a messenger. She's 30 years old. She's been fighting for 5 years to protect her son's inheritance, and Parliament just gave it away. Disinherited Edward. Made him nobody. A royal bastard with no claim, no future, nothing. She's furious, beyond furious. She's spent a decade fighting these men, compromising, negotiating, trying to work within the system. And the system just destroyed her son, stole his birthright, decided that York's ambition matters more than Edward's legitimacy. She's done negotiating, done compromising, done trying to work within a system that hates her. She's going to war, real war, no more half measures, no more mercy. York wants the crown, he'll have to take it over her corpse. December 1460, Margaret marches south with an army, mostly Scottish and Northern English troops, men loyal to Lancaster, men who hate York, men willing to fight. They're rough, undisciplined, but they're hers, and she's leading them personally. They catch York at Wakefield on December 30th. He'd marched north with his son Edmund and a small army. Confident, probably arrogant. The war is over, right? Parliament decided. Margaret will accept it eventually. She has no choice. He's wrong. Margaret's army attacks. The Battle of Wakefield is brutal, short but vicious. York's forces are outnumbered, outflanked, destroyed. York himself is killed, cut down trying to escape. His son Edmund is killed, cut down separately, and then the savagery. They cut off York's head, take a paper crown, mocking the man who claimed to be king, and place it on his severed head. Parade it around, then stick it on a pike on Micklegate Bar in York City. Let it rot there, let everyone see. This is what happens to men who try to steal crowns. Edmund's head goes up too, father and son, side by side on pikes, rotting, being eaten by crows. Medieval warfare is brutal. This is beyond brutal. This is psychological warfare. This is Margaret saying, I will destroy anyone who threatens my son. She marches south toward London. Her army is looting as they go, burning villages, taking food, raping women, the kind of casual violence that happens when soldiers haven't been paid and figure they're owed compensation. Northern armies in southern England, already seen as barbaric by soft southerners, living up to the reputation. Margaret can't control it, doesn't have the resources to pay them properly, doesn't have the authority to stop men who've just won a major battle from taking what they think they're owed. So southern England watches in horror. This terrifying horde led by a French queen who's just killed and mutilated the Duke of York. This demon woman commanding northern barbarians. February 1461, Second Battle of St Albans. Margaret's army meets a Yorkist force trying to stop her march on London. And she wins, decisively, crushes them, rescues Henry, who'd been held by the Yorkists. For a moment, she has everything. Her husband, her son, Edward is 7 now, with her throughout this campaign. A victorious army. London is 20 miles away, but London's gates stay closed. The city refuses to let her in. They're afraid of her army, afraid of looting. Stories have reached them. Villages burned, women raped, churches robbed. The Lancastrian army sounds like the apocalypse, like a plague sweeping south. London wants no part of it. Margaret sends messages, promises to control her troops, promises order. But while she's negotiating, Edward of York, the dead Duke's son, now 19 years old, is marching toward London from the west. Fast, disciplined. His army isn't looting, isn't terrorising the countryside. They're behaving like proper English soldiers. London makes a choice, opens its gates to Edward, welcomes him, proclaims him king. Edward IV, not regent, not protector, king. At 19 years old, he's taken the throne his father died trying to claim. Margaret retreats north, furious, heartbroken. She'd been so close, 20 miles from London, 20 miles from victory, and the city chose York. Chose a 19-year-old usurper over the legitimate queen and her legitimate son. But she still has Henry, still has an army, still has Edward, her son, the rightful heir regardless of what Parliament says. This war isn't over. One more battle, one more fight. If she can defeat Edward IV, destroy his forces, kill him like she killed his father, then Lancaster wins. Then her son gets his crown. Then everything she's fought for becomes real. March 1461. The armies march toward each other, heading toward what will become the largest, bloodiest battle in English history. Margaret doesn't know this yet, just knows she's running out of chances. This might be the last one. March 28th, 1461. Margaret's army camps near the village of Towton in Yorkshire. It's cold. Late March in northern England means freezing temperatures. Snow in the forecast. The men are tired. They've been marching for days, fighting sporadically, low on food, low on supplies, but they're here, ready for one more battle. Margaret has sent Edward, her son, to safety. He's 7 years old, too young to fight, too precious to risk. He's miles away with trusted guards, safe as anyone can be during civil war. Margaret is here without him for the first time in years. It feels wrong, like missing a limb, but she has to focus. This battle will decide everything. If her forces win, Henry stays king. Edward, her son, remains heir. Lancaster survives. If they lose, she can't think about losing, won't let herself. They have to win, have to. The Lancastrian commanders are confident. They have more men than Edward IV's army. Maybe 30,000, maybe more. They have the better position, higher ground. And they've beaten Yorkist forces before. They can do it again. March 29th dawns cold and grey. Snow starts falling around dawn. Big wet flakes that soak through wool and make visibility non-existent. You can't see more than a few hundred yards. Can't tell where the enemy is. Can't plan properly when you're essentially blind. The battle starts around mid-morning. Yorkist archers fire first, using the wind. The snow is blowing south toward the Lancastrians. Yorkist arrows fly farther, hit harder. Lancastrian arrows fall short. Land in snow and mud. Yorkist soldiers collect them and fire them back. Free ammunition. The Lancastrian commander, Duke of Somerset, son of Margaret's dead ally, orders an advance, close the distance, get into sword range where arrows don't matter. Thousands of men march through snow, slipping, falling, getting up, marching again. Your legs burning, your lungs screaming, the cold making everything harder. They crash into the Yorkist lines around noon, and the slaughter begins. This isn't a battle. This is mutual murder. Hand-to-hand combat for hours. Swords, axes, hammers, daggers. Men killing each other in a snowstorm. Blood mixing with snow, creating this pink slush that squelches under boots. You're fighting, swinging your sword, blocking, attacking. The man in front of you goes down. Another takes his place. You kill him. Another. Another. Your arm is tired, so tired. But you keep swinging because if you stop, you die. Men are screaming, cursing, praying, dying. The smell of bodily fluids and blood and sweat. It goes on for hours. 4 hours, 6, 8. Men fighting in shifts. When you're too tired, you step back. Someone takes your place. You catch your breath. Drink water if you have any. Then back into the line. More killing, more dying. The snow keeps falling, covering the dead, making the ground treacherous. The Lancastrians hold. For most of the day, they hold. Somerset is brilliant, tactical, keeping his men organised despite the chaos, despite the exhaustion, despite everything. They're going to win. Margaret's army is going to win. And then, late afternoon, disaster. Yorkist reinforcements arrive. The Duke of Norfolk with fresh troops. Thousands of men who haven't been fighting all day, who aren't exhausted, who slam into the Lancastrian flank like a hammer. The line breaks. Not everywhere, not immediately, but in one section. And that's enough. Medieval battles are about morale as much as numbers. When men see their line breaking, they panic, start to retreat. The retreat becomes a rout. The Lancastrians run. Thousands of men fleeing north, trying to reach the river, the Cock Beck. It's a small stream. Normally you could jump across it, but it's late March. Snowmelt has swollen it, and now it's clogged with bodies. Men trying to cross, drowning, falling. Others trying to cross by walking on the bodies, drowning anyway. The river is choked with corpses, the water running red, actually red. Blood mixing with water turning it this awful rust colour. Yorkist soldiers pursue, cutting down fleeing men. No mercy. Edward IV's orders, no prisoners, no quarter. Every Lancastrian who surrenders is killed, stabbed, bludgeoned, murdered. This isn't battle anymore. This is extermination. The killing goes on into the night. Men hunting each other by torchlight, finishing the wounded, looting corpses. The snow is still falling, covering everything. By morning the field is white again, peaceful, except for the mounds, bodies under snow. Thousands of them. The chroniclers will say 28,000 dead. 1 out of every 100 military-age men in England. killed in a single day at Towton. The numbers might be exaggerated. Chroniclers love exaggeration, but even half that number is catastrophic. Even a quarter. England has bled itself almost to death. And Margaret hears about it from a messenger. She's miles away, waiting for news, hoping for victory. The messenger is covered in mud and blood, exhausted. Your Grace, Towton, we've lost. The army is destroyed. Somerset fled. Most of the commanders are dead. We've lost. Margaret is 31 years old. She's just lost her army, her cause, everything she'd built over 5 years of war, destroyed in a single day, in a snowstorm, in Yorkshire. Her commanders are dead or scattered. Her husband where is Henry? Safe, captured, dead? She doesn't know. She has to run. Again. Has to grab her son and flee. Again. Has to become a refugee. Again. But this time there's nowhere to run to. England is lost. Edward IV controls everything now. The south, the Midlands, the north, London, everything. Margaret takes Edward, her 7-year-old son, and runs north, into Scotland, begging James II for help, for sanctuary, for anything. James gives them shelter. Not much, not comfortable, but shelter. They're alive, that's something. But they can't stay. Scotland is poor. James can't support them indefinitely. Doesn't want to. Supporting a defeated English queen is expensive and politically dangerous. Edward IV is powerful now, might invade Scotland to get them. James doesn't want that war, so Margaret keeps moving. Scotland, France, back to Scotland, trying to raise support, trying to find someone, anyone, who'll help her restore Henry, restore her son's inheritance, but nobody wants to help a loser. Nobody wants to invest in a cause that's already lost. She lives in poverty now. The fine clothes are gone. The jewellery, sold to fund armies that lost anyway. She's wearing the same dress day after day. It's stained, torn, smells like sweat and smoke and desperation. She who was Queen of England is now a refugee begging for scraps. The years blur together. 1461, 1462, 1463, Margaret launching small invasions, landing in northern England with borrowed troops, briefly capturing castles, holding them for weeks or months before Edward's forces arrive and crush the rebellion. Running again, always running. 1462, Margaret lands in Northumberland with French troops, captures Bamburgh Castle, holds it through winter, but in spring, Edward IV's army arrives with cannons, bombards the castle, stone walls crumbling under cannon fire. Margaret barely escapes, flees to Scotland. Again. Same year, another attempt, another failure. This time she doesn't even reach land properly. Her ships are caught in a storm, half sink. Margaret is shipwrecked on the coast, nearly drowns, loses everything. She and Edward, now 9 years old, wash ashore half dead, are rescued by locals who recognise her, shelter her, send her on her way. She's living on charity now, taking money from anyone who'll give it. Louis XI of France, her cousin, sends small amounts, not much, just enough to keep her alive, just enough to keep hope barely flickering, but not enough to actually fund a war, not enough to restore her. Henry VI is captured in 1465. He'd been hiding in northern England, moving from safe house to safe house, living with supporters. But eventually, someone betrays him. Yorkist soldiers find him, recognise him despite his commoner clothes, bring him to London. He's imprisoned in the Tower. The king becomes a prisoner. Again. They treat him relatively well. Edward IV isn't needlessly cruel to defeated enemies. Henry gets decent food, decent quarters, but he's still a prisoner, still defeated, still broken. Margaret hears about it in France. She's 35. Her husband is captured. Her cause is destroyed. Her son is 11 years old and living in exile. She has nothing. No army, no money, no support, No realistic chance of ever restoring Lancaster. She should give up. Any rational person would. The war is over. Edward IV has won. Henry is imprisoned. Edward of Westminster, her son, will never be king. The Lancaster dynasty is finished. Accept it. Move on. Find some quiet corner of France and live out her days in obscurity. Margaret can't do it. Can't give up. Can't accept that her son's birthright is gone forever. She keeps writing letters, keeps begging for help, keeps planning invasions that will never happen, keeps hoping for a miracle. And in 1470, impossibly, she gets one. Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick. They call him the Kingmaker because he's made and unmade kings. Helped York challenge Henry VI, helped Edward of York become Edward IV. The most powerful man in England. Wealthy, connected, respected, feared. And now he's furious with Edward, the king he made, because Edward made a mistake. Married Elizabeth Woodville without telling anyone. While Warwick was in France negotiating a different marriage. Made Warwick look like a fool, destroyed his credibility, humiliated him in front of European courts. Warwick seethes for years, tries to control Edward through other means, fails. Edward is king now, has his own power base, doesn't need Warwick anymore, actually starts sidelining him, promoting Elizabeth Woodville's relatives over Warwick's, taking power away from the man who gave him the throne. So Warwick does the unthinkable, approaches Margaret of Anjou, the woman he's been fighting for 15 years, the woman who represents everything he opposed, the she-wolf, the demon queen, and offers her a deal. Margaret is in France, 40 years old now, living in poverty. Her face is hard, laned. She looks older than 40. War and loss have aged her. Her hands are rough. These aren't queen's hands anymore. These are hands that have held reins and weapons and signed desperate letters for years. Her body is worn. Your back hurts all the time. Your joints ache. You're 40 in the 15th century after 2 decades of stress. You're exhausted down to your bones. Warwick's emissary arrives, delivers the message. Warwick wants to switch sides, wants to overthrow Edward IV, restore Henry VI to the throne, and to seal the alliance, his daughter Anne will marry Edward of Westminster. Margaret doesn't trust him, obviously. Why would she? This is Warwick, the man who killed thousands of her supporters at Towton, the man who helped Edward seize the throne, the man who's been her enemy for 15 years. Why would he help her now? But what choice does she have? She's been fighting alone for 9 years, failed invasion after failed invasion. Nobody else will help her. If Warwick, with his wealth and armies and connections, is willing to switch sides, she has to take the chance. Has to. For Edward. For her son. For the crown that's been stolen from them. She negotiates, not quickly, not easily. She doesn't make this simple. Warwick wants the alliance? He'll have to beg. Has to apologise for Towton. For the years of war. For everything. He does. Swallows his pride and apologises. Because he needs Margaret as much as she needs him. The deal is struck. Warwick will invade England, overthrow Edward IV, restore Henry VI, and Anne Neville, Warwick's daughter, will marry Edward of Westminster. Lancaster and Warwick united. Strange bedfellows, desperate times. September 1470. Warwick invades England, lands in Kent with an army, marches inland, and it works, easily, shockingly easily. Edward IV is caught off guard. His support crumbles. People are tired of York, tired of war, tired of instability. Maybe Lancaster wasn't so bad after all. Maybe Henry VI, for all his weakness, deserves another chance. Edward IV flees, runs to Burgundy with his brother Richard and a handful of loyal followers. Just disappears. Leaves England to Warwick, the king who'd won at Towton, who'd crushed Lancaster, who'd seemed invincible. Runs away when Warwick invades. Warwick marches into London, pulls Henry VI out of the Tower. He's 49 now, imprisoned for 5 years. His hair is grey, his hands shake, he's confused. doesn't really understand what's happening, doesn't remember half the people greeting him, but he's king again. The Restoration. Lancaster restored. Margaret hears the news in France, can barely believe it. After 9 years of failure, after losing everything at Towton, after countless failed invasions, after years of poverty and desperation, she's won. Henry is king again. Edward, her son, will marry Anne Neville. The future is secure. She's cautious, stays in France for months, waiting to make sure this isn't a trap, that Warwick isn't going to betray her, that Edward IV won't come back. She waits through winter, into spring. Everything seems stable, secure. Maybe this is real. Maybe she's actually won. April 1471. Margaret finally returns to England. Brings Edward, her son, now 17 years old enough to fight, to lead, to be the Lancaster heir they need. He's tall, handsome, looks like his grandfather, Henry V, the great warrior king. Maybe Edward will be like that. Maybe he'll be the strong Lancaster king they've needed all along. They land on April 14th. Margaret steps onto English soil for the first time in years. Home, finally home. She's 41 years old, she's fought for 20 years, sacrificed everything, and now she's home. The Queen returning in triumph, her son beside her, victory within reach, and then the messenger arrives, running, covered in mud, gasping. Your Grace, Warwick is dead. Battle of Barnet, yesterday. He's dead. King Henry is captured again. Edward of York, Edward IV, he's back. He's in London. He's king again. Margaret's world stops. Warwick dead? How? He just restored Henry, just secured London, just made her son heir again. How is he dead? The messenger explains. Edward IV invaded, landed in March while Margaret was still in France, gathered forces, marched on London, met Warwick at Barnet on Easter Sunday. Battle in thick fog, confusion. Lancastrian forces fired on each other by mistake. Line collapsed. Warwick was killed trying to escape, cut down, dead. The Restoration lasted 6 months. Margaret is 41. She's just landed in England. She thought she'd won. Thought her son was secure. Thought 20 years of fighting had finally paid off. And it's gone. All of it. Gone. Warwick dead. Henry captured. Edward IV back on the throne. Everything lost. Again. She has her son, Edward of Westminster, 17 years old, and a few hundred men who'd come with her from France. That's it. That's all she has left. Edward IV's army is in London, thousands strong, fresh from victory at Barnet. Coming for her, she needs more troops, needs to reach Wales where Lancaster supporters will rally to her. If she can reach Wales, if she can build an army, if she can fight one more battle, maybe she can still win. Maybe she can still save this. One more battle, one more fight. She's been fighting for 20 years. What's one more? But Edward IV is faster. His army is already moving, marching west, blocking her path to Wales. She tries to reach the Severn, cross into Wales, but Edward's forces catch her first. Near Tewkesbury, she's trapped. Between the river and Edward's army. Has to fight. No choice. May 3rd, 1471. Margaret's army camps near Tewkesbury. They're exhausted. Been marching for weeks, trying to reach Wales, trying to outrun Edward's forces. Failed. Now they have to fight. One more time. One final battle. Margaret sends messages to Edward IV, tries to negotiate, offers terms. Her son will surrender his claim, will accept Edward as king, in exchange for safety, exile, something, anything except death. Edward IV refuses. No terms, no mercy. Come out and fight or be slaughtered where you stand. The night before the battle, Margaret can't sleep. She's 41 years old. Her son is 17. Tomorrow he'll fight his first real battle. Tomorrow he might die. She lies in her tent listening to soldiers moving outside, talking, sharpening weapons, praying. She wants to go to Edward, her son, wants to hold him, Tell him she loves him. But he's with the commanders, planning, preparing, becoming a man, becoming a leader. She can't baby him now, can't treat him like a child. He has to fight, has to prove himself, has to be the Lancaster heir they need. She prays. For the first time in years she really prays. Not the rote prayers of daily mass, but desperate pleading. Please God, keep him safe, let him survive, let me die if necessary, but keep my son alive, please. She's 41. She's lost her husband to madness, lost her crown, lost everything. She can lose it all again. But not her son, not Edward, please not her son. May 4th, 1471. The Battle of Tewkesbury begins at dawn. Margaret watches from a distance. She's not fighting, she's 41, no combat training would be useless. But she can watch, has to watch. Can't abandon her son, even by staying away. She stands on a hill, close enough to see, far enough to be safe if the line breaks. She can see Edward, her son, in armour, Somerset's colours, on a horse, raising his sword, trying to rally the men. He looks like a king, looks like his grandfather, looks like someone who could unite England, could be great, could be everything Henry VI wasn't. If he survives, if he wins, if God is merciful. The battle is short, maybe an hour. Margaret's forces are exhausted and outnumbered. They fight anyway, because they have no choice. Your 17-year-old prince is on that field. If he's fighting, you fight. That's loyalty. That's why Lancaster still has supporters after losing for 10 years. But exhausted men can't beat fresh troops, can't beat Edward IV's tactical genius, can't beat luck when luck has abandoned them. The Lancaster line breaks, men flee, running toward Tewkesbury Abbey, claiming sanctuary. Yorkist soldiers follow them inside, kill them anyway. Blood on the altar, bodies between pews, sanctuary violated. But war doesn't care about sanctuary when the enemy needs to die. And Edward of Westminster, Margaret's son, the Lancaster heir, the boy she fought 20 years to protect. The sources disagree on what happened. Some say he died in battle, fighting bravely, killed by an arrow or a sword blow. A warrior's death, honourable. Others say he was captured, brought before Edward IV, the 19-year-old usurper king facing the 17-year-old legitimate heir. Edward IV's brothers were there. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, the future Richard III. George, Duke of Clarence, the Yorkist princes. "What brought you here?" Edward IV supposedly asked, giving the boy a chance, an opportunity to beg for mercy, to surrender properly, to save himself. "To recover my father's kingdom and mine own inheritance," Edward of Westminster supposedly answered. Defiant, proud, refusing to beg, refusing to bow. A true prince, and Edward IV's brothers killed him. Right there, stabbed him repeatedly, cut him down while he was unarmed and captured. Murdered a 17-year-old boy because he was Lancaster, because he was legitimate, because he was a threat. Margaret doesn't see it happen, doesn't know the details, just knows that at some point during or after the battle, her son dies. Edward of Westminster, 17 years old, dead. She's captured hours later, found hiding in a nearby religious house. They bring her out, put her on a horse, take her to Edward IV. She's numb, shock has set in. Your son is dead. Your husband is captured. Your cause is destroyed, and you're still alive. That's worse than dying. That's torture. Edward IV looks at her, the she-wolf of France, the demon queen, the woman who led armies and killed his father. Now just a broken woman whose son is dead. He could kill her. Should kill her, probably. She's dangerous, has been dangerous for 20 years, but she's also broken, defeated, no longer a threat. He imprisons her, parades her through London first. The woman who'd terrified England for 2 decades, who'd led armies, who'd put a paper crown on his father's severed head. Now just another defeated enemy. A warning. This is what happens when you challenge York. People throw things, rotten vegetables, shit. Rocks, screaming insults. Whore, French bitch, she-wolf, murderer. Margaret rides through it with her head up. Because what else can she do? She's 41. Her son is dead. Her husband will be murdered within weeks. She's lost everything, but she won't give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. May 21st, 1471. Henry VI dies in the Tower of London. Officially, he died of melancholy. His heart broke when he learned his son was dead. Couldn't take the grief. Just stopped eating. Stopped living. Died of sadness. Nobody believes this. Henry VI was murdered. Everyone knows it. Probably that night. Probably on Edward IV's orders. Henry was the Lancaster claim. As long as he lived, there could be more rebellions, more restorations. Margaret had already done it once. In 1470, pulled him out of the tower and made him king again. Edward wasn't risking that twice. Henry was killed in his cell. The tower records are vague. Died of displeasure and melancholy. That's the official story. The real story, stabbed, or bludgeoned, or suffocated with a pillow. Methods vary depending on which chronicle you read, but dead, definitely dead. The Lancaster king murdered on the night of May 21st. Margaret hears about it in her cell. They tell her casually, "Your husband is dead. Thought you should know." Like it's nothing. Like 26 years of marriage, awful marriage, yes, but still marriage, means nothing. Like Henry being dead is just another data point. Margaret is 41 years old. Her son is dead. Her husband is dead. The Lancaster dynasty is extinct. There are no more Lancaster heirs, no more legitimate claimants. It's over. Everything she fought for, everything she sacrificed, 20 years of war, accomplished nothing. She's kept in custody, not tortured. Medieval nobility usually didn't torture defeated enemies of royal blood, but imprisoned, moved from place to place. Different noble households, guarded, watched, kept away from anything that might let her cause trouble. Though what trouble could she cause? She has no army, no money, no son to fight for. She's just a prisoner, a reminder of the war that finally ended. The first few months are the worst. She's in shock, can't process what's happened, can't accept that Edward, her baby, her son she fought 20 years to protect, is dead. Can't believe Henry is gone. Can't understand how everything fell apart so quickly. 6 weeks. That's all it took. 6 weeks from landing in England triumphant to losing everything. She stops eating. Not intentionally. Just can't. Food tastes like ash. Sits in her mouth like stones. She forces down enough to survive, but barely. She loses weight. Her clothes hang loose. Her face becomes skeletal. Guards whisper that she's wasting away. That grief is killing her slowly. She doesn't care. Wouldn't mind dying. Death would be easier than this. Than waking up every morning and remembering. Edward is dead. Henry is dead. Everything is gone. Why keep living? What's the point? But she doesn't die. Her body keeps functioning, keeps breathing, keeps her alive against her will. So she exists. Not living, just existing. Day after day, month after month, in various noble households, watched, guarded, forgotten, the years blur. 1471, 1472, 1473. Margaret is moved from place to place. Sometimes she's in better conditions, a comfortable room, decent food, books if she asks. Other times worse, cold rooms, bad food, no books, no comfort, just walls and guards and the endless passage of days. She's aging badly. 41 becomes 42 becomes 43. Her hair is going grey. Her face is lined. Her hands shake sometimes. She looks 60. Looks ancient. 20 years of war followed by 3 years of grief will do that. Will age you decades in years. Sometimes she thinks about escape, about somehow getting out, fleeing to France, starting again. But for what? What would she do? Raise another army to restore? Who? There's no one left to restore. Lancaster is dead. Henry is dead. Edward is dead. She's the last one. The final remnant of a dynasty that doesn't exist anymore. In 1474, Edward IV's government starts discussing her future. Can't keep her imprisoned forever. It's expensive, serves no purpose. She's not a threat. Can't rally support, can't raise armies, can't do anything except exist in a cell. So what do they do with her? They decide to ransom her, send her back to France, let her be Louis XI's problem. Louis is her cousin. He can afford to keep her, can take her off England's hands. Edward IV gets money. Margaret gets freedom. Sort of. The negotiations take months. Louis wants to pay as little as possible. Edward IV wants as much as possible. They settle on 50,000 crowns, a substantial sum, but Margaret has to give up everything. Her title as Queen of England, her dower rights, the lands and income she was entitled to as Henry VI's widow, her claims to any English property, everything. She's renouncing it all, admitting defeat, accepting that she'll never be queen again, that her son will never be king because her son is dead, that Lancaster is finished. She signs the documents. What choice does she have? Stay in England as a permanent prisoner, or go to France and at least be free, even if she's penniless, even if she has nothing? Freedom is better than captivity. Barely, but better. January 1476. Margaret of Anjou is ransomed, leaves England for the last time. She's 45 years old. She arrived at 15, spent 30 years in England, married at 15, fought for 20 years, lost everything, now leaving, going back to France, the country she left 3 decades ago as a hopeful bride, returning as a broken exile with nothing. The Channel crossing is rough, winter seas, cold wind, spray soaking through cloaks. Margaret stands at the rail, watching England disappear. The white cliffs fading into grey. Gone. She'll never see England again. Never set foot on the land she tried to rule. Tried to save. Tried to hold together while her husband drooled in corners and her son grew up in exile. Failed, lost, gone. She arrives in France, not Paris, not any great city. Louis XI doesn't want her in his capital. Too embarrassing. Too politically awkward. So she's sent to Reculé, near Angers. Small chateau, quiet, isolated, out of the way, where she can be forgotten. And that's what happens. Margaret of Anjou is forgotten. The she-wolf becomes a memory, a cautionary tale, a story people tell about the foreign queen who destroyed England, who led armies and killed nobles and finally lost everything. But the real Margaret, the woman living in a cold chateau in Anjou, nobody cares about her. She lives on a pension from Louis. 5,000 livres annually. It's not nothing, but it's not much. Not enough for a former queen. Not enough for comfort. She has a few servants, a small household, nothing like the grandeur she once had. Nothing like the power. Her father, René of Anjou, is still alive. Barely. He's 76, still collecting titles he can't enforce, still pretending to be King of Naples and Jerusalem, still broke, still irrelevant. He visits occasionally. They sit together. 2 failures, father and daughter, both lost everything, both living on charity, both waiting to die. René dies in 1480, Margaret's last family connection. She's 49. Her mother died years ago. Her father is now gone. Her husband is dead. Her son is dead. She has no siblings, no children, no one. She's completely alone. She spends her days in prayer, writes letters occasionally, mostly to religious houses asking for prayers. She's trying to secure masses for Edward's soul, for Henry's soul, paying what little money she has to have priests pray for her dead family, trying to buy them time out of purgatory. It's all she can do now. The chateau at Reculé is cold, damp, the roof leaks. In winter, the wind cuts through the walls. Margaret sits by the fire wearing layers of wool. Still cold, always cold. Her joints ache, her back hurts. She's 49, 50, old by medieval standards, ancient for someone who's lived the life she has. War ages you. Loss ages you. She's worn out. She thinks about Edward constantly. Her son. 17 when he died. What would he be now? 28, 29, a man, maybe married, maybe with children, maybe king, maybe everything they'd fought for. But he's dead. Dead at 17. Never got to be a man, never got to be king, never got to have the life he was supposed to have. She thinks about the battles, Towton, Tewkesbury, all those men dead, 28,000 at Towton alone. Did they die for nothing? Did all that blood accomplish anything? Lancaster lost, York won. Was it worth it? The decades of war, the thousands of deaths, her son's death, Henry's death? Was any of it worth it? She can't answer that. Doesn't know. Some days she thinks yes. We fought for legitimacy, for rightful succession, for Edward's inheritance. Those things matter. God's law matters. We were right to fight. Other days she thinks no. We should have surrendered after Towton. Should have accepted the Act of Accord. Should have let York be heir and saved thousands of lives. Should have saved my son. She'll never know which answer is right. Never get to go back and make different choices. Just has to live with what happened. With the choices she made. With the consequences. 1482, Margaret is 52 years old. She's been in France for 6 years, living quietly, praying, writing letters, existing. Not really living, just waiting to die. Her health is failing. She's sick more often than not. Coughing, feverish, weak. Medieval medicine can't help, can barely diagnose. Just knows she's dying. Slowly, painfully, alone. August 23rd, 1482. Margaret of Anjou dies in Château d'Ampierre. She's 52. Not old by our standards, but she's lived hard. War and loss have used her up. She's exhausted, done, ready to go. There's no grand funeral, no state ceremony, no massive monuments. She's buried at Angers Cathedral. Simple service, simple tomb, no elaborate effigy, just a stone marker. Margaret of Anjou, Queen of England, daughter of Renee, mother of Edward, dead. The epitaph could be longer, could mention the battles, the wars, the 20 years of fighting, could talk about Towton and Wakefield and Tewkesbury, could talk about leading armies and challenging kings. But why bother? Everyone wants to forget. The Wars of the Roses are over. Edward IV is king. York won. Lancaster lost. Margaret lost. Time to move on. For centuries, that's how she's remembered. The she-wolf, the demon queen, the foreign woman who caused England's civil war, who led armies when women shouldn't lead, who fought when women should surrender, who refused to accept her place. The cautionary tale, the warning. This is what happens when women step outside their proper roles. But that's not the real story. The real story is more complicated. Margaret didn't start the Wars of the Roses. Weak kings and ambitious nobles started it. She just refused to let them steal her son's inheritance without a fight. Refused to surrender when men said she should. Refused to accept that being female meant being powerless. She fought harder than most kings, led armies better than most generals, made strategic decisions better than most advisors, and lost anyway, not because she wasn't good enough, because she was a woman, and medieval England couldn't handle that, couldn't process a woman wielding that kind of power. So they made her a monster, a she-wolf, an unnatural creature who'd stepped outside God's order. But she wasn't a monster. She was a mother trying to protect her child, a queen trying to hold a kingdom together when the king couldn't, a woman trying to do the job nobody else would do, and medieval England punished her for it, called her names, made her a demon, blamed her for everything, and then forgot her when she died. Margaret of Anjou deserved better, deserved to be remembered accurately, as a skilled political operator, a determined mother, a loyal queen, a woman who fought impossible odds and lost. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because the system was rigged against her from the start. Because medieval England would rather lose to Edward IV than accept Margaret of Anjou. Because being competent while female was an unforgivable sin. She died alone, forgotten, penniless, but she'd fought. God had she fought. For 20 years, led armies, commanded men, survived battles, protected her son for 17 years. Could have surrendered at any point. After Towton, after the failed invasions, after Warwick died, kept fighting until there was nothing left to fight for. Until her son was dead, and her husband was murdered, and her cause was extinct. That's not villainous. That's not unnatural. That's just stubborn human determination. And if fighting for her son made her a she-wolf, if refusing to surrender made her a demon, then maybe the problem wasn't Margaret. Maybe the problem was a world that couldn't handle a woman who fought back. Thanks for staying with me tonight. If you made it this far, drop a comment. What surprised you most about Margaret's story? Did you know about her before tonight? Let me know where you're watching from. And if you want more stories like this, women who fought impossible battles and were called monsters for it, subscribe, because history is full of she-wolves who are just women refusing to disappear. Women who are punished for being competent, for being strong, for refusing to stay in their place. Margaret of Anjou fought for 20 years, lost everything. Her husband, her son, her crown, her dignity, died in poverty and exile, and was blamed for all of it. Because she was a woman doing a man's job, because she refused to surrender, because she fought back. The next time someone calls a woman aggressive or ambitious or says she's too much, remember Margaret of Anjou. Remember that powerful women have been called monsters for centuries. Remember that fighting back when you're female is still considered unnatural. Remember that we're still having the same fights Margaret fought 600 years ago. Sleep well. And remember, being called a monster usually just means you refuse to lose quietly. Good night.